My name is Raghu. I work as a solution architect at Red Hat. Today, the topic is how do we simplify access to the databases that are managed databases in the cloud. If we take a quick look at the agenda, we look at the industry trends, and then we look at some of the challenges that customers may face, and then we present what Red Hat offers as a solution to them, and then we take a quick look, like a walkthrough at the solution, and then we can also share some references if you would like to try. So let's get started. Now, the slide that you're seeing here, so this is the data that comes from a survey. So that's done with more than 200 contributors, and they're across EMEA, North America, and then APAC, and they come from different industries like FSI, telco, and other industries. And also, the personas are the different people who are involved. Some of them are directors, vice president, and then CISOs. So what this means basically, as you see on the top, the top workloads that are deployed on OpenShift or the Kubernetes platform are database and AI ML related. So this is the data that came after the survey. Now, that brings us to the question, right? So why deploy databases and data analytics workloads on OpenShift? So if you look at here, so with OpenShift being the enterprise Kubernetes platform, it helps the automated operations. For example, the flexibility it offers while using operators, and then you could use Helm charts or customize to deploy your applications. And when it comes to consistency and portability, which means you can deploy your applications all the way from on-prem to cloud, and also you will be able to migrate your applications easily across multiple environments. And of course, Red Hat has strong partnerships with different vendors in this context. Now, this is an interesting slide which I want to share from my own experience. So back in the days, we wanted to migrate some applications from on-prem to cloud. And one of the applications, we needed to connect to a database. At the time, we are also dealing with AWS, so there is an initiative going on, and they said, hey, you know what, you can use some of the services in AWS. So one of our developers, they have identified RDS and said, we would like to connect to RDS for our application. So, well, at that time, in the involvement that I've been in, I was like somewhere in Atlanta, like almost on vacation. I get a ping from my developer saying, I need access to AWS. And then for me, the first thing is, sure, and why do you need that? He says, I need to create a database, right? Now, I always keep these things in mind when it comes to security. So the first thing I was like, okay, how do I share the credentials? Of course, I don't want to share them over chat or something. But then also there is a lot around how do we do the automation? Like, do we need some scripting? And then also there can be some inconsistency, which means in this case, for instance, we also want to deploy the same application, but on Azure with a different database. So that's also a question around, how are the user interface looking like for these different services that are offered within the cloud. So this also gives some opportunity for errors. So to put in perspective, this is a lack of productivity. And of course, at that time, like when I was thinking about these things, obviously, my developer was frustrated because he's waiting on me. So, and also from a SecOps perspective, right? If you have a different team, they're totally unaware of what is happening, which means if you create a database in the cloud, and if they don't have visibility to it, unless they go and check in or unless they have their own mechanisms, they wouldn't be able to see that. So that creates some limitations on the visibility aspect. So in that sense, there is also corporate risk, right? So these are the situations when it comes to the current scenario when they're not using something like this. Now, how does this challenges of ad hoc database are looking in the enterprise? So just to repeat, it won't provide a central visibility when it comes to the areas across the application usage or audit. And then when it comes to sharing the data, if it involves credentials, that's a huge challenge, right? Now, also the usage, it can be unconstrained. And also there can be some redundant instances, especially when we have more than one developer working in a team, and if they're trying to work on a same user story, so there could be some scenarios where some effort is duplicated, right? Now, how do we solve this? Like, what's the Red Hat's approach to solve this problem? So we introduced Red Hat OpenShift Database Access. So with this, it's going to simplify the ability to provision, connect and also monitor the developer access for the databases that are hosted in the cloud, like managed databases. And also it's possible to have this even in multi-cloud and hybrid cloud environments. Now, when you look at the managed cloud services from a Red Hat perspective, when you look at this picture as to understand where RHODA fits into the architecture, so as you see this on the bottom, we have this hybrid cloud flexibility, which means you can have this multiple cloud providers, be it Amazon, Azure, or IBM Cloud, so different cloud providers. And then, if you see on top of it, you have these different services. For example, when it comes to Azure, you have Azure Red Hat OpenShift as a managed service, and then Amazon, you have RHODA. So in the same way, you have other services. Now, on top of it, where the value of OpenShift is realized, you have OpenShift data foundations coming in. So this is how it fits. And then, if you recollect what I said just before on slide 5 around the scenario, like the current scenario, now we would like to show how this will address those, which means by having OpenShift database access, you would have self-service, which means you have the self-service access to the database services, which means it enables autonomy for the developers. And then you also have a user interface that will be provided within OpenShift to have some visibility. And also you have the APIs when it comes to programmatically interacting. And then also it doesn't have a need for a lot of skills. Like you don't need to involve a lot of upskilling. And of course the operations is going to be happy because they can understand how they can grant access control to the developers, or they can get a lot of visibility and it's easy to maintain. So this is how the Red Hat OpenShift database access will solve those issues and present a good scenario. Now, if you look at this, what this means is this is providing an access path. So RHODA plays a role in providing an access path while trying to connect to the different databases, which are the managed databases. And then if you see, you have RDS, MongoDB, Crunchy on the right. So the list keeps growing, which means the product team continues to evolve the list of the databases that can be supported. Now, if you look at how this will make an impact on the different teams or the personas, so when it comes to the IT operations, it makes sure that it's establishing consistency, so which means what they always look for, which is the standardization and governance, so it is established. And for developer, it improves the agility, which means the self-service ability is improved there. And then when it comes to the DBAs, they have much more control and much more visibility. So this is how it makes an impact on the different areas within the company. Now, having said that, I just want to do a quick walkthrough and just explain how this solution looks like. Let me see if I go there. So what you're seeing right now, this is a hybrid cloud console from Red Hat. So in this case, I can show you by showing my cluster. In this case, I'm using a Red Hat OpenShift cluster on Amazon. Let me bring that up. So if you go to the hybrid cloud console, this is where I have my cluster. Assuming that I have created a cluster, when I go here, I have a tab called add-ons, and then I get to choose or click on Red Hat OpenShift database access. And when I click on install, this will take care of making sure this is installed on the cluster. So this is how it works when it comes to the RHODA, and you will have a similar experience with another OpenShift cluster on the cloud. Now, what this means is basically, this will take some time. So in the interest of time, I want to show you how this looks like in the OpenShift cluster. So when I go to the OpenShift and when I go to the install operators, this will be installed as a operator on the OpenShift cluster. So as you see here, once the install is completed, you would be able to go to your operator hub and you can see the RHODA operator installed. Now, what this means, this can be done by an admin in a case where you have teams with operations or with different teams doing different things from an infrastructure and app dev side. But in general, anyone who has access to the cluster with admin rights can come and see here. Now, this is the operator part of it, and what this means is you will get a new entry item on the menu on the left side. If you go here, you'll have data services, and when I click on database access, so this provides a single pane of view, like one-stop shop. Remember, we talked about visibility as to understanding the instances and then the different databases that the applications are trying to interact. So this is where you get to see them. Now, for today's purpose, from a developer perspective, I want to take an example called Fruit Shop. So in this case, I'm not doing the CI part, but I'm assuming that I have an image built and pushed to a container registry, which is called Fruit Shop. Now, the good part here is, let me show you this repository. So as you may know, you may use something called a Helm chart to deploy the application. And if we are speaking about a team who is already doing GitOps, which means the ability to use Git as source of truth and have your Kubernetes or OpenShift manifest in the Git repository. So in this case, RHODA provides you the flexibility to have your manifest declared in the Git repository. So what this means is, if I'm a developer, if I'm trying to connect my application to one of the managed databases, I will be able to declaratively specify all those manifests, and this is an example of the manifests that are involved. And I'm using Argo CD in this case. So if I go here, so this is my Argo CD application. So just to quickly explain, so this is basically using the Git repository, which I just showed as an example to get those manifests. And once we create the application, and once it is sync, all these manifests are created. And the best way to check is by just going to once the sync is finished, as you see here, it says sync OK, and now I could do it like I could scale replicas and do a sync again, but again, to save some time, I will go and show you like how to verify. So this is the developer console. So when I go to the developer console, I would see, so in this case, I have created a namespace or project called OpenShift Commons RHODA. So as you see here, so this is the application itself that is deployed. And then this is the connector. Like if you see, this is the service binding that is helping us to connect the application to the database. Now, if I just click on this, this would be the route to take me to the Fruit Shop application. So this is a REST API. I could query by doing a GET call, but in this case, I would go to the UI. So in this case, I'm just to test if my application is working or not, I would add a fruit. So I can add something called mango as a fruit. If I save it, yeah, it's saved. So just to summarize what we have seen so far, so we have seen how the operator is installed when it comes to using something like ROSA, and then we have seen how it looks in the operator hub. And after that, we also have seen that we can actually deploy or configure the application to connect to a database in a GitOps way, and this is all we could achieve. And what we can go further is also if we are thinking about implementing CI/CD pipelines, like using OpenShift CI/CD, we could also use this code and implement our pipelines. So that's about how the demo or the application works while using RHODA. Now, if I go back to my presentation, so this is the roadmap, kind of understanding where the product is right now. So if you look at fall 22, it's in service preview, and we are working with some of the customers who would like to use RHODA. And we can always help if anyone is interested to try the product. And there are some resources on getting started. I can share the slides later, but you can look at here as well on how to do. And these are some of the resources like blog posts, just to give more knowledge on RHODA and other examples. That's it. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me. Thank you.